No story is the same. Every story is told from a different side and a different point of view. And no one's story is ever the same. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, but pictures can keep secrets. The story is many words that can create a new picture. What about the story of life, of someone's life? What picture does that create? Alyssa Ann Goldberg, yes, she was born with a basic Jewish last name, was born December 30th, 1967, in I don't even know where because she's lived almost everywhere all over the United States. She was the firstborn, oldest to 3 siblings, 1 sister, 1 brother, and 1 half-sister. She spent her summers at a Jewish camp, and when her brother and sister eventually aged up, she took care of them at camp as well. Do you ever notice that when you see something awful on the news, you always think to yourself, but that would never happen to me? I always think, well, why did that happen to them then? Well, this was one of those times. When my mother was 11 years old, her parents decided to get a divorce. Yes, I know, everyone's parents get divorced, but you still never think and always hope that it will never happen. They fought each other tooth and nail for full custody, and in the end, my grandma was granted full custody of every single one of them. My grandpa married not too long after and had my mom's new sister. Unfortunately, my grandmother did as well, marrying a less than desirable man. He was both physically and emotionally abusive, physically to my grandmother and emotionally to both my mother and my aunt and uncle. I don't think I'll ever truly know what all she experienced, and honestly, I'm not sure I want to know or could handle it. My grandpa was eventually able to gain partial custody, but my grandmother would take every chance she could to manipulate her children, making them not want to spend any time with their father. Eventually, over the years, they were able to realize what was happening and eventually tried to spend as much time with him as possible. After years of this constant back and forth, my mother was kicked out of my grandmother's house at 16 after my grandmother decided to try and sue her over false claims of physical abuse towards my mother. She spent many trying years trying to stabilize her life and herself. At 20, she met my father, and 3 months later, they married. I guess back in those days, you didn't need to spend as much time trying to get to know one another. And 2 years later, they had my brother. Back when she was 18, she had originally tried to go to college, but it wasn't for her, and she eventually decided to drop out. She became a receptionist for a physician's office and has spent many years doing that. She spent many years working from home and raising my brother, younger sister, and I. While my father was constantly back and forth being deployed with the Marines. Life hadn't changed much over the years, even when we moved from North Carolina to Virginia after my father retired from the military. Eventually, when I was in 6th grade, my mom went back to school. She was becoming a nurse. It was hard, but after 2 years at our local community college, she became a certified RN. She began at a cardiology office and eventually left for a surgical position at a hospital. She still works at the same hospital, but now as a neonatal intensive care unit nurse, helping take care of sick babies. About 2 years ago, my grandpa became extremely ill. He had been ill for years, but eventually he was able to go into remission, recovering from a major case of C. diff. But while I was continuing my freshman year here, he eventually did pass away, and I still don't think my mom was over it. She's read many books on how to deal with her grief, and honestly, the that I worried about when he passed away was how she was going to be able to handle it, and if she could take it, and how she would react and behave after it all happened. Everyone's story is different. Some experience strife only for it to make them stronger. Others experience hardship, and the pain is too powerful to overcome. My mom came out on the other end, stronger and better. To this day, my mom is the only one in communication with her mom, the only one who is comfortable communicating with her, who has been able to somewhat forgive her for what she's put her through. Her stepfather did eventually pass away, and it almost strengthened their relationship that he wasn't coming between them anymore, but my uncle is still unable to truly speak to my grandmother after what he was put through, as well as my aunt. I think that proves that forgiveness is the strength, and my mom had it within her.